to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And with me is my guest, Krys Copeland. Hi, Krys.
Hi, Reverend Don. Great to be back. How are you?
I am good. I have recently returned from the Corellian Regional Illustration in Buffalo, as you'll know if you watched yesterday. And as you know, if you watch regularly, you can type your questions or comments into most any platform you're watching on, and they should show up here in my chat room. There are a few of our platforms that don't do that, but most of them do. And that way we can talk directly. And on Wednesdays, Krys is our normal guest, and we talk about what's new at Corellian Publishing, and that will be our subject today. So, Krys, what's new at Corellian Publishing?
Well, right now we have been working this week on a few different projects. Witch Wars, of course, which is coming out sometime this October or possibly early November. But we're excited to have that product. This is the sequel to the original Witch Wars defense manual by Ed Hubbard, and it's really been exciting watching him piece this together and dive into some of these topics, but in that are quite old within the community, but are in this new fresh light of 20 years later with all the modern technology, the social media that we have today, and how that has changed the way we prevent and the way we combat witch wars in our community.
Yes, indeed.
So, if you're interested in that, you can actually get the original Witch Wars for free at CorellianPublishing.com. Just go to CorellianPublishing.com, click on books, find the Witch Wars book, which is on the top row, and you'll see a link right at the top for the original Witch Wars book. So, if you read through that and you decide you like it, come back and check out Witch Wars 2 and help support our ministry with your purchase.
Yes, indeed. And we want to say hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you, Renee.
Hi, Renee. Good to see you. And thank you for your friend request. I got it on Facebook the other day, so I appreciate you adding me. In addition to Ed's new book that's coming out, one of my favorites that I've been working on today, with going through and checking the edits, has been your book,
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Don's book of stones, metals, and crystals, which is available for pre-order now on CorellianPublishing.com, so you can go check that out. But I was going back through the information on the historical uses of stones, and the section on Peru is quite fascinating with their personification of mountains. And you and I were just chatting about this earlier. You talked about that they're not the only culture that has this idea of worshiping mountains. So could you expand a little bit on that?
Well, this is very true. And we want to say hello to Janet Winston in the chat room. Hi,
Hi,
Janet.
Janet.
If you look at Japan, Mount Fuji is very, very famous as a deity in that region, a deified mountain. And certainly not the only one. If you look at India, Mount Everest is locally looked at as a goddess, as are many other mountains. The idea of a mountain as a manifestation of a deity is not a particularly unusual one worldwide. You find it in a number of places. In some cultures, it's more. You'll find, for example, in classical Greece, you'll find sacred mountains, which are the quote the home of a certain deity.
Mount Olympus,
If I remember
especially.
correctly, Mount Helicon was the home of Apollo, and Mount Olympus the home of the Olympian gods. But it's entirely possible that originally they were a manifestation of the given deity and later looked at in a different way. You find mountains all over the world looked at in as being a sacred thing. And hello to Archangel Orion in the chat room. It's good to see you, Archangel Orion.
Good to see you, Archangel Orion, and I love your greeting. Greetings from the stars above. Beautiful. I love it.
So I mean, this is something that we do find, um, and it. we talk about the metaphysical uses of stones and metals extensively, but there are also liturgical uses which may or may not normally be thought of as metaphysical. But for example, at certain points in ancient Egypt and also in the ancient Near East, gold was thought of as being the flesh of the gods and lapis lazuli as their hair. And I am under the assumption that this is because these substances were commonly used in sacred statues and then started to be taken literally by some people. That may or may not actually be what happened, but it tends to be what I assume. But it did come to be taken literally. Um, in the Americas, I believe gold was commonly regarded as the tears of the gods. Um, but yes, these things were often given a divine origin or a divine nature. And this is part of understanding the metaphysical uses of stones, particularly in later ages when some of the origins of these beliefs are not as obvious. It's still good to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most interesting as an American, one of the most interesting, and it's a part Native American, one of the most interesting spiritual mountains, of course, is Six Brothers, which is in modern times called Mount Rushmore. And or sorry, not Six Brothers, six grandfathers,
Mm.
and the grandfathers that it's talked about embodying there is not George Washington and the other presidents that currently deface the sacred mountain, but that they were the spirits that resided within the mountain, and also, of course, a very sad story about what's happened with this mountain and how it's been desecrated by modern society in our world.
And we want to say hello to Christine in the chat room. It's good to see you, Christine.
Hi, Christine. Good to see you.
And Archangel Orion says gold is the most expensive item in spirituality. And I think for the most part that's true. It depends on what exactly you're using, but by and large, for most people, I would say that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very curious when we got to because being a pagan atheist myself, the science part of the healing properties of stones, metals, and crystals was really fascinating, because you dive into these kind of case studies about real life uses of stones and minerals and metals and crystals within science and technology well, not traditional medicine, but Western medicine, traditional Western medicine, and how the properties that we are now using them for are connected to the historic metaphysical properties that we've used them for. For example, salt being some kind of purification
Mm.
material, and the Romanian salt mines. I believe it's called the Slanik Prahova salt mine, which I've actually heard about here in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. One of my students is Romanian, and she goes to this salt mine every single year because she has bronchial issues. And this is something that is prescribed by doctors in Romania. Go
Hmm.
spend 3 days in the salt mines. Go spend 2 weeks in the salt mines, and people come out feeling so refreshed. And of course,
Hmm.
it's a salt mine, so there's not a whole lot to do there. So they've actually created kind of an underground amusement park. You can go and play like skee ball. You can rent a paddle boat and go around the underground lake. But just spending time in that salty air
Mm.
um, actually does heal and cleanse the lungs. So that was very cool too to have.
There are many spas here in the U.S. that now have salt rooms,
Mm,
which are for that same purpose. And it is interesting to consider how close that is to how we've always used it metaphysically.
yeah.
And Christine says, I always wondered if the time, temperature, and/or the way crystals were made helped to determine the metaphysical properties of
probably of
presumably
the stone.
the crystals.
Yeah, and you talk about that in the book as well, the difference between sedimentary versus igneous versus metamorphic rocks, and how the process of how they're made actually affects their properties, both metaphysically and scientifically.
Hmm. Absolutely. And this is also part of what I talk about when I talk about why it's not only naturally formed crystals that can have value, and lab grown crystals, for example, also can, but they will be very different because of the nature in which they're made. And so, yes, these things do affect them. And how do you know um, how they have been affected? Well, most commonly, you're going to have to feel for it because most places we buy crystals don't have the information on those details. They just have crystals in a little plate somewhere,
And
and you
you
pick the
talk
one
about
you
how to
want.
Yeah, and you talk about how to connect with the stone and how to
Hmm.
read its energy in the book. So I love that. And personify the stone, how to actually
Hmm.
find what being is within it and connect to that being, how to talk to the stone.
Hmm.
Very fascinating stuff. One of the other uses that, so I know a lot of people in your audience probably are already familiar with this because I post about mental health a lot on my social media, but I have borderline personality disorder. And so lithium is often used to treat personality disorders, so regulate the mood and things like that, and help de-stress. And lithium's metaphysical property, which has been what it's said for thousands of years to be have been used for, is emotional regulation.
Hmm.
And so it's amazing to see that science is now saying, hey, that folk wisdom that's been going around and we made fun of for so long, yeah, that actually is a thing and it helps people. So we can use it now in science to help people with emotional dysregulation.
Yes, indeed. And it's very interesting to see how many aspects of traditional metaphysical thought are in some ways being backed by science now, which is very refreshing considering that it was not always the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Now, the other thing when you're dealing with stones that have, for example, lithium in them, you also want to be careful to remain mindful of that and use them in appropriate ways. And Christine says, "Do you remember pet rocks?" Well,
Yes.
yes, I do.
I have
And
several pet rocks here. Actually, here's I have this one here. I think it's from Greece.
oh,
So,
very cool.
yeah. I keep them all over my office, just from different travels that I've been on.
Says as a kid, she became very attached to her pet rock.
Oh,
And this stands to reason because just because these were commercially marketed doesn't mean they don't have the same metaphysical properties as any other stone. And if you connected to it, yes, you could become very attached to it,
absolutely.
even though you didn't realize necessarily at that time that this was a metaphysical thing.
Yeah.
But it was, and yeah,
Personifying the stone. Yeah.
this yeah, and this is also true, for example, of jewelry. And I have my rings on today, as I usually do. Um, but you don't have to be practicing metaphysics to be able to feel the energy of a particular stone in a particular piece of jewelry. Um, you can be just an ordinary person and know that a certain piece of jewelry might make you feel better or feel a certain way, or might not really agree with you.
Yeah.
And you might not really know why, but those energies are still there, whether you're conscious of them or not.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's part of the idea of studying what they're about, so that even when you're not necessarily thinking, I mean, when you're going into the bathroom and the vanity has a stone top, that too has an energy. Or if you have an antique dresser in your bedroom and it has a stone top, that has an energy too. Or or you have a mortar and pestle that's made of stone. It carries its own energy. And Janet in the chat room says, "Yes, I still have my pet rock from the '70s. Yay!"
Oh, wonderful.
And yeah, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
Um, And many worthy rocks found their forever home through pet rocks, and others found temporary homes.
Yep.
But I'm sure that they did what they needed to do and moved on.
So one
And
of
with
the
that, we are at the halfway point in our broadcast, and we want to take a moment to hear from our sponsors. And here we go. And there we are back again. Thank you to our sponsors, and still working out all the details of how to manage that little changeover. So we are back.
Yeah, and during the break, I was actually pulling up a different section from that same area of the scientific chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the really cool ones was bismuth, which I didn't know a lot about bismuth before I read through this. But some of the metaphysical uses, we'll just go through those first, are for transformation, progression, focus. It's said to enhance concentration, especially during times of change, and helping people navigate transitions in their personal and spiritual life. It's also used to amplify psychic abilities and improve focus during meditation. Uh, and also for mental clarity. Now, some of its scientific and medical uses include industrial and technological applications due to its non toxic nature and ability to substitute for lead in alloys. And it's also used in medicine, specifically Pepto Bismol. The bismuth is the biz in
Mm-hmm.
Pepto Bismol, and that was such a cool fact to learn. So it's used to treat gastrointestinal ailments, which to me connects back to that
Mm-hmm.
transformation issue because digestion is transformation. We're transforming
Yeah.
food into energy. And so that's the literal definition right there. And also, so seeing those connections with its uses in industry as well, it's used for physical transformation of metals into alloys. So that's also an example of transformation within it. And I just found that's a very cool psychic, spiritual, scientific connection.
Yes, indeed. We want to say hello to two neurons in the chat room.
To two neurons, what a cool name. Nice to see you.
So, what else do we have new at Corellium Publishing?
I've been working today on editing through Court of Five Tribes, which is a fantasy novel by Laura Enright. It's a fantasy novel that's directed mostly towards adults. I think teens and young adults would also enjoy it quite well too. But it's been a really fascinating story to read through. Basically, there are five tribes of dragons living in this universe that's a bit like it's a bit based on Chinese culture and mythology, and there are not just dragons in this world. There's also humans in this world, and right now the humans are going through a pretty terrible time as well because the kingdom is broken after a terrible emperor, two terrible emperors ruled in a row, but the third emperor, the new emperor, is actually someone who wants to fix the errors of his fathers and his father and his grandfather, and reunite the kingdom, which has broken apart under warlords, the rule of warlords since then. And at the same time that that's going on, there's also this tree that the dragons guard, and they have no idea why they guard it anymore. But very early in the book, so I'm not giving any spoilers here, it'll be on the back cover. There is an evil that is trying to burst free from underneath that tree. And the dragons will need to, stop that from happening, if possible. So, without giving away any spoilers on it, that's the basic rundown of the setting and setup of the book. And yeah, I'm finding it really just pleasant to read through because Laura is such a talented storyteller.
Yes, indeed.
She's written several other books already in the fantasy genre, and this one in particular just really fit the kind of pagan storytelling that we like to see here at Corellian Publishing. And that should be coming out in late September. I'm hoping by the end of September we will have that finished and published and ready to go. But yeah, it's very exciting seeing how it's coming together for the final version.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And in addition to that, we also have the ritual recipe cards. If you've ordered one of our ritual recipe card decks from Sarah Hartsong, those are now in. So we will be sending those out this week, I believe,
Hmm.
to those who have ordered them. If you haven't ordered yours yet, no problem. You can go to CorellianPublishing.com and you can click on books again. It's listed under books as well. And find the ritual recipe cards there. And the ritual recipe cards are very cool because you can actually just pull them out and put them together and create a ritual in minutes, and then hand those cards out to whoever is participating in that ritual, and basically teach people how to participate in or lead a ritual in just a few minutes. Everything they need to know is on the card, so you just hand it to them and they're ready to go for whatever they need to do. In the
Very cool.
Yeah.
And these, of course, are them.
Yes, it's okay.
This side is green, so it's disappearing on green screen. And then on the back, they look like this.
And we've chosen to go with a black and yellow color combination, yellow for the text so that it can be read in low light. So if you prefer to do candlelight rituals or moonlight rituals, you can still read the cards without much light. Based on a suggestion from a friend of Sarah's who has some difficulties with reading, we have updated the new version of the deck to be black and white because she says that white text on black background is actually easier for many people with sight issues instead of the yellow. The yellow can actually create some glare and make it hard to read. So if you order the with this new set that we are collecting orders for, then you will have the new cards, which will also have a variety of backs and some bonus cards in there that are not included in this one. So go ahead and place your orders for those two to get the updated version of the deck. The other version of the deck, the original, is still perfectly usable. The updated one just has a bit more color and a bit of layout changes and a few additional meditation cards for decorating your altar during the different Sabbats.
Very cool.
And you'll get 36 cards with that as well. Some of these will be instructionary cards, very similar to a recipe, and others will be specific, like a reading for how to call the quarters or call the god and goddess, and very universal. You can use them across different traditions and different pantheons, and they will still work. So our goal with this deck was to make it as universally accessible as possible for anyone who follows an earth-based faith.
Yes, indeed.
And we will have some new decks coming out from Sarah soon. We are, of course, in talks with Autumn Stoneflower because she is a teacher on making the deck. And you'll probably remember that Autumn has just debuted her own first novel, It Circles End Academy New Beginnings, the first in the 3-book series. And this one takes place. Um, in upstate New York, and it's about 4 children attending a Wiccan boarding school, and some of the difficulties they face from judgmental townspeople, and how they navigate those difficulties. So super important as well, not just in telling a fun story, but also teaching kids some life lessons on how to deal with bullying, how to deal with harassment from police officers or harassment from adults on these issues. And of course, anyone who has children and has raised pagan children will know that our kids every day face these issues in their hallways in the schools, in their classrooms with their teachers, and just even walking around in the community. And so teaching our kids how to protect themselves from these issues is super important. And doing
Yes,
that
indeed.
through storytelling is such an effective way to teach children these skills.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you haven't purchased that for a kid in your life, I recommend doing that. It's made for ages 8 to 14 or so. I think older than that, and they probably won't be as interested because the children are around 13 years old in the book. And younger than 8, they probably will just need some help with reading the book. Yeah.
And we want to say hello to Jessica in the chat room. It's good to see you.
Hi, Jessica. I love the spelling of your name with the K. I like names with Ks, as you can see. Yeah. And Two Neurons says it's because I only got 2 of them to rub together, so that's why he calls himself Two Neurons. I love that.
We also want to take this occasion. Today is September 4th, which is the founding day of the Corellian tradition. We want to wish the tradition a happy 145th anniversary and also a happy 23rd anniversary to Witch School.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's been a long road
Yeah.
and many interesting adventures. And with that, I see we're coming to the end of our half hour, so let us close with our prayer, as we always do, and I'll see you again tomorrow. And thank you for joining us, Krys.
Oh, thank you.
Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to bring us constant new knowledge, new lessons, new experiences to enliven and enlighten our lives. Help us to enjoy and make the most of these things as we go forward through life so that it is an enriching and empowering experience. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for this and for everything you do for us. And knowing you are always with us, still from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always. And thank you, Krys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I'll see you tomorrow.